Hi, everyone. Thank you for the intro. My name is Alex, and today I am a malware reverse engineer and threat intelligence analyst with the amazing global threat intelligence team at PwC. However, not too long ago, I was a digital communications professional working in the nonprofit sector. So what I'm hoping to do today is to share a little bit about why I decided to make this career transition happen, and ultimately what really helped me accomplish it. So first, I'll tell you a bit about how important it is to find your drivers and motivations, especially if, like me, you're coming from a non-technical background and are really trying to build up those technical skills. Obviously, looking at those is really going to be one of the essential steps. And then we'll talk a bit about planning your career transition based on the skills and experience you'll need. After that, I want to focus a bit on how to make it happen. So, going from that learning to finding mentorship, gaining experience, and also showing it off, and strategies for job applications. Last but not least, I'll share a bit about, what it looks like to really stay resilient throughout this process. And because we all know how tough the current job market is, and it is very important to be in the right frame of mind to stay focused and, avoid getting discouraged. So, having said that, you want to get technical, and you also chose a specific role. So my first question is, why this role and not something else? And my second question is, when it comes to building those skills that you're going to need, what drives you? So why do you need to be aware of this? First of all, you will be facing some pretty big challenges, and being aware of this is going to help you out very much when it comes to staying on track for your journey. So what challenges? One of them, it might be about some unsolicited advice. And, this is something that absolutely drives me nuts, especially when you're talking to somebody who has an established career in the infosec field, and you just open your heart to them and their response is, well, you don't have to be technical to be in cybersecurity. But what if I want to? So a little story time. A couple of years ago, the company I was working for had shut down unexpectedly. And that was right 1 week before I was supposed to give birth to my first baby. As I was trying to navigate, life as a new parent and also job hunt, I had the chance to speak to a mentor from a certain program I was part of. And after hearing my story, this person kind of tried to convince me that I should change my goals and do something, less technical. And that happened even though I know I was very, very adamant in pursuing the RE route. And I had already taken very concrete steps and certifications towards it. So what did I do? I nodded, said thank you, and moved on. Didn't give it any second thought. And moral of the story here is, when you make a bold choice, you are going to find people along the way who think it might be too bold and you might regret it. And so they do it out of the idea of helping you out. But this is when your drivers and motivations will keep you going. And that's not it. There's more challenges. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Changing careers is a marathon. There will be hard times. Maybe it's going to be when you don't understand a concept, or maybe you can get a specific result, but banging your head against the wall or the screen or both will happen. So the question is, what is going to get you past that moment of frustration? Because I know you're going to be thinking that, this is not worth it. The bigger the leap, the slower your progress is going to be. And that is why you need to know your why and what your drivers are. But what is my why? What were, my motivators throughout this journey? First of all, RE is fun. It's just a puzzle. You don't have even all the pieces yet in the beginning. And so I enjoy both the technical side of it and the creative problem solving, side of it. And in general, my why revolves around the combination of learning, helping other people, and also building community. When I asked myself, like, why do I want to be in this space? Why am I drawn to it? I realized that my first motivator is really learning. Learning is my happy place. When I learn, I feel accomplished. And the funny part is that it's not like I always knew this. A college friend of mine actually was visiting New York City when I used to live there. And we decided to meet up to, catch up over coffee and such. Obviously, we started chatting about, the old times. Who are you still in touch with? Did you see anyone lately? And things like that. And then, as my friend was recalling some of the classes we took together, they said something along the line of, oh, there were a lot of people who would go to class just for the grades, and it showed. But not you, they said. You genuinely love being there and learning, and it was apparent. And that's when it hit me. That's when I realized how happy I was when I was learning. And that made a lot of sense because I had been teaching myself a lot of things in my spare time just for fun. And so to this point, I know that InfoSec and even more RE is a field where you never run out of things to learn. So I thought, this would make it a perfect match for me. My second motivator about, building community, helping other people. I love being able to volunteer, do workshops, more generally, use my skills to help others. And this field, this area in particular, really thrives on it. So in this phase, what can help you, I think, is just looking for strong motivations that are going to help you settle any doubts that might come up along the way. And the stronger they are, the easier it's going to be for you to think, hey, this is worth it. Because even though it might take a while to get where I want, this really makes me happy. You will also, though, at the same time, have to keep it real and evaluate, time and effort needed to get where you want. And remember, this is the type of choice that you're going to have to make every day because the key to everything is really consistency and making a big commitment. Moving on from this, as I said, commitment, discipline. This is a marathon, not a sprint. You made a commitment. Congratulations. That's awesome. Now what? First of all, if you haven't done so already, I would recommend you research your target role as much as you can. This means obviously understanding what's required to take that role on, but also what's going to make you successful at it. Like you want to know where you're going in the long run. And so one way I did this, it was by looking at, general job descriptions for my target role and seeing what skills and qualifications were mentioned are required. So this is, a recent example of description. You can see, a variety of skills mentioned: disassemblers, debuggers, decompilers, unpacking malware, Windows internals, and et cetera, et cetera. And so as you go through these job descriptions, there is a high chance that you will stumble upon things that you're absolutely clueless about, or maybe you have just a vague idea of it. And I want to say that's fine. Like we were all in your shoes at some point. And so this goes back to the point that your journey is a marathon. You'll be picking stuff up along the way, and it's going to be a lot of stuff, I promise. But you might be comfortable with, not knowing everything from the start, because that's actually like the key that drives you further. And so, speaking of journeys, this is a little bit of what mine looked like. As I shared earlier, I started in a spot where I felt maybe stuck, a little bored. I had nowhere to go, but I knew that one thing that I love learning. I had taught myself Python, and in this case, I just decided to refresh it. and add some projects on top of it. Added Linux command line, some bash scripting. And at that point, I did not know yet I wanted to be a reverse engineer. I wasn't also fully sure about the role I wanted to get into altogether and at the very beginning, but I knew I needed a baseline of, knowledge and skills. And so I learned about networks, OSINT, ethical hacking, CTI, forensics. And so I created this like big mixed salad of knowledge with a side of practical skills. I also knew I had a transferable skill, and it was writing. And I wanted to showcase my writing skills in a way that was relevant to my target role. Obviously, writing skills are very much needed, I think I can say, in every area of information security. And that's when Wanna Cyber was born. It was a weekly newsletter before newsletters were a thing. And it was dedicated to people just like me, newcomers who are looking to learn, find resources, especially the free and affordable resources. And right as I was doing research to find these resources, I found the two biggest opportunities that really, really changed my game. The first one was a cyber defense challenge sponsored by Target and Women in Cybersecurity. Over the past few years, I know the format changed a bit, but when I did it, it was all revolving around one intrusion and one piece of malware. The second opportunity was the Sense Cyber Academy, which allowed me to, have 3 certifications within a 6 months time frame for free. And as I was studying for GSEC, I also started my first InfoSec job, which at the same time, I was also doing the cyber defense challenge and starting to experiment with disassemblers and debuggers and things like that, and looking at binaries in a way that I had never looked at before. I am telling you, the first time I opened up a binary in Ghidra, I thought that of all the niches in cyber, that probably was not going to be mine. But somehow the CTF kept bringing me back to that and helped me find ways to overcome, that mix of confusion and information overload that disassembling entails. And so by the time I ended up in the top 10 of the Cyber Defense Challenge, I knew that malware and CTI were going to be it for me. And that is why I chose to pursue the GIAC Reverse Engineering Malware certification. And obtaining it was just a beginning because, between that time, as you can see here, and when I got my first actual RE job, there were many, many more hours of learning, analyzing, writing, applying to jobs, interviewing, getting rejected, rinse and repeat for months and months to get to my final goal. Again, this is a marathon, not a sprint. What can help you make this happen? You should know that choosing this field means, and especially a technical niche, means researching and learning every single day. So if you by any chance don't like that, it might get tricky. It can help to give yourself time to, try things out. I did not know right away that RE would be my thing, as I mentioned, but I was able to stick around it long enough to realize it. And so at the same time, it's useful to know how you like to learn and find different excuses to learn, CTFs, taking on projects that push you to learn and things like that. And since you have chosen your path, you want to really be intentional about where your time and focus goes, because keep in mind, time is a limited commodity, unfortunately. So you might want to narrow down your intentions and goals and really focus on what you have decided to do. And so as you go through your journey, don't feel like traditional paths are the only way to go. Actually, look at what is free or affordable first, because discipline and sustainability is a combination that really allows you to run that marathon. Better sometimes, to only study 30 minutes per day but stick to it and do it every single day than to do 5 hours in one day and then be burned out for a week. Because remember, your brain is unlikely to retain information if it is completely overwhelmed. So you want to build buffers in your journey. And last but not least, remember to celebrate your milestones and accomplishments. Taking the big leap. So here we go from learning to really getting where you want to get and get your job secured. Many times people ask me how I made that jump. A few tips that I want to share with you. First of all, I mentioned Wanna Cyber newsletters when newsletters weren't a thing. So it was already more visible. It was also very focused on an audience that I knew well, people like myself, newcomers to the field. It was a perfect combination of showing off my skills and putting myself out there. And speaking of, one point, at the very beginning, I absolutely hated having to put myself out there. I never cared about, clout, followers, and the whole like social media stuff. But I did care about two things here. One was meeting cool people, the people who are doing what I was dreaming to do. The other was having an excuse to learn. So what I did was every week when I published my newsletter that gave me an excuse to learn, I would spend also some time looking up the researchers that I mentioned in it. And I made sure to tag them. Sometimes, it would be for an interesting piece of research, sometimes, conference talk. But let me tell you, there are very, very few researchers in the security space who don't really want to interact with people who appreciate their work. So I took it kind of advantage of that to make connections with them, ask them questions, gain their perspective, get their advice. And that is what changed my perspective on putting myself out there. I was like, okay, it's not so bad after all. I just make new friends. When it came to applying to jobs instead, I decided that I wanted to go deep instead of going wide. And that it comes a little bit from my choice of role as well. That allowed me to, first of all, optimize my job search. So only target the job postings that were exactly what I wanted to do, but also spend more time learning than and preparing for those interviews rather than sending out hundreds of job applications. And then there's mentorship. I know many people already talked about it. There are many ways to find it. Personally, I met amazing mentors and friends in all kinds of different ways. However, I ended up meeting my first mentor because he gave me my very first technical interview. So a little bit of story time. I was studying for my GRAM certification, and I really, really wanted and needed a mentor who knew someone who knew about RE because I wanted guidance. So I started asking around, the people I knew. And I was also part of a Discord server that had a mentorship channel in it. And when I asked about RE mentors, someone said, oh, yeah, here's a resident RE and tagged this person. So I got in touch with this person, told him my story. He shared the whole load of like amazing resources, things that, I still use to this day. And then he said, oh, actually, I work for so-and-so company. We're hiring for a malware RE. If you wanted to apply, I could refer you. And so obviously I said yes. So I went through the interview process, recruiter, hiring manager, part of the team, everyone was amazing. And then came the day of the technical interview with this person who is an incredibly accomplished RE. Keep in mind, this was my very first technical interview. So I was super duper nervous. So we went through it. And at the end, I thought, well, that wasn't terrible, right? And at that point, he said, oh, okay, I want to give you some feedback. And I thought to myself, and there he comes to crush all my hopes and dreams. But instead, it was a complete opposite. He said that he was impressed that I had great skills for someone who had been in the game for such a short amount of time. And in the end, the team did not hire me. but I got a mentor and amazing friend out of it. So this to say, you never know how you'll meet your mentors, and stay open. Um, Moving on to what can help you out, as you build your experience. Similar to what I did with Wanna Cyber, you might want to find your own angle to it. Don't just take on a project that everyone else is doing. Try to make it yours and unique, and build it in a way that sets you apart. When you're applying to jobs, and this, might be contrary to what most people say, like apply to everything, I went the opposite route. Be picky. Like, put more time and effort into learning, into doing projects, into doing things that help you learn. Don't just stay generic in the role that you're choosing. So, for example, if you want to do offensive security, go specific. Like, what do you want to do in OffSec? There's a million different paths. Because if you are specific, you can build your experience around it. Get specific certifications, see if maybe you can do original research on in that specific field. For example, if you pursue OffSec and you have a CV to your name, you're going to have way, way more chances to get that pen testing job or red teaming job than someone who maybe has wider but less in-depth knowledge. And when it comes to finding that job, also remember that interviews are opportunities to connect with people. So I was just talking about how I met my first mentor. After the team chose a different candidate, I was just, reaching out to everyone to thank them and, tell them I enjoyed our conversations. They all said, feel free to reach out with any question. And here's what made a difference for me. I actually did reach out and started conversations about their work, and, went back to it and asked more questions. And, the rest is history. So my point here is that all the people you meet in your interview, in, the different phases of your interview cycles, are people you want to be learning from. So there is no harm in connecting with them afterwards, and, maybe have an informational chat, ask them questions, get their perspective and advice. And trust me, you will be surprised at knowing how many people were rooting for you as you were interviewing. And now, last but not least, as I mentioned already, we all know the job market is tough. You might face a certain amount of rejections that can come in many forms, but I assure you, all of them hurt. In my case, I did not want to miss any opportunity, but I also kind of didn't want to put too much into each job application. And, by too much, I mean emotional energy. I know there's people who track all of their job applications and, do the math on them and things like that. But even though I'm a huge nerd, I'm the opposite. I very much apply and forget, because for me, it's way more sustainable this way than, having to take all of those experience in and like getting attached to each application. So you might want to make sure to understand what works best for you, because we're all different. So be mindful of that. And, speaking of rejections, I almost got hired not once, not twice, but 3 times. And by this, I mean getting all the way to the final stage and then the team picking somebody else. So when your goal is so close, you can see it, it's right there, and then you're suddenly back to square one, it is tough. Remember, we were talking about drivers. This is when you're going to need them, when you truly need to remind yourself that it is worth it. But how did I finally get hired? Many people ask. And essentially comes down to 3 things: passion, grit, initiative. Passion is my driver. Someone who was involved into hiring me recently told me something along the line of, oh, when we interviewed you, it was so clear that you love this stuff. And that is number 1. Grit is just my way of being. I know that no matter what, I will not give up. It might take me longer. It might take me these many hours of studying and practicing and whatnot, but I will not give up that, big goal of mine. So it is a lot about making a commitment to yourself, to your future, and to your craft, to what you enjoy the most. Initiative is what has set me aside, the fact that I gave my projects a specific angle and built them up from scratch the way I wanted them. Um, we already talked about rejection when it comes to challenges. You know, Sometimes it might mean getting ghosted, never getting feedback, might also mean the same way that happened to me, getting all the way to the end multiple times and then someone else being chosen. But no matter how it happens, it's gonna always hurt. And again, going back to the point, that is why you need your motivators. And you need to know why you're doing that and why you care about it. And along with rejection, many times goes imposter syndrome because, as you get rejected, it's obvious, we are human. You start doubting yourself, your skills, wondering, do I have enough of that? Is this the right path? And staying focused and recommitting to your goals, is going to be crucial. So, but also, like, let me tell you, if you stay in this field, imposter syndrome is never going to leave you alone. And so here is a bit of a different way to talk about rejection and talk about resiliency. Um, I have not failed. I just found 10,000 ways that will not work. So this is something that my other big passion taught me. Climbing is 99% about falling and failing as a consequence. It's just about, figuring out that puzzle, getting it wrong a ton of times before finally getting it right. So as you go through that process, you realize that what you normally think of as failure actually does not exist. You keep adjusting, your body in different ways until you find a way that works, and that way brings you to the top. And so I think this is also true about this whole like career transition process, because first of all, remember that rejection is not personal, even if it might feel like it is. But secondly, you are in the process of learning what does not work. And learning always in some way, even though you might not realize it at the time, always brings you to grow. So in this frame of mind, when it comes to interviews, stop seeing them as this big of a deal and start seeing them as like opportunities to connect with your peers, with people that you want to be learning from. So when you're interviewing, start asking these people about what you really want to know. Maybe it's about a certain research direction. Maybe it's just some curiosities that you have around their roles. Like, see that interview piece as the start of a conversation rather than a one-off. And then, when they tell you, feel free to reach out, do reach out, because that is what is going to make a difference. And so, speaking of also being resilient, I would suggest you to start to focus as much as possible on the small wins and on the things that you can control. So, rather than having a huge goal such as, oh, I want to get a job in XYZ by the end of the year, make it about committing to a certain amount of time every day so that, by the end of the year, you have learned XYZ. That's more realistic. It is going to make you feel accomplished and it's going to make you grow. Plus, it does feed directly into your bigger goals. And as a consequence, it makes you more resilient because that is literally proof that you can do it. So when people also give you positive feedback during interviews or just in general, run with it. Like if they notice that, chances are other people in the same context are also going to notice it. So make that feedback yours and make it part of your why. And oh no is just a next opportunity. It's just a redirection. It's not a this is over type of situation. And if I find my mouse back, oops, apologies. It always seems impossible until it's done, because the bigger the leap you're taking, the crazier it will sound. And trust me, if your dream is big enough, it's going to feel impossible until you make it happen. And this is about it. I just want to say thank you to all of you for listening, and also to everyone who's working super duper hard behind the scenes to make this summit happen. The biggest thank you also goes to all the people who have been, supporting me in so many different ways in this journey, my mentors, friends and family, and also the broader InfoSec community, which I very literally would not be here if it weren't for you all. So thank you.